Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I'm Lisa, and in this video we're going to talk through how I've completed this Rhino. If you like this video, remember to give it a like and subscribe, and if you feel like you'd like to give this guy a go, you can head on over to my Patreon where this is a real-time tutorial. You get given the line art, material list, reference photo, everything you need to complete this one all by yourself. So let's get started. So I'm not going to lie, this texture can be very tricky, especially when you're not using a solvent to blend, like I'm not using in this one. So I'm just using my warm and cold greys to blend together the pencils to cover the tooth of the paper. I think as well it is beneficial to use this sort of blending method because the tooth of the paper will sort of come through a little bit, but it also just adds to the roughness and the wrinkles of the skin. So looking at the rhinos, the hippos, the elephants, they have very, very crinkly skin. So having that sort of texture throughout the paper really doesn't hinder the drawing at all. It really just adds to the texture. So when you're colour picking for this sort of thing, you need to look at the tones underneath the colour that you can see. So there are a lot of greys here, but there are a lot of warm greys and cold greys. So the warm greys sort of have orange, red, yellow underneath them, and the colder greys have blue and purple colours underneath them. So I've used some burnt sienna, bista, and Van Dyke brown as the sort of warmer tones to put over and around these areas. And then I've used the light ultramarine and violet for the cooler areas to go with the cold greys and the warm greys. So I think what took me the longest time with this whole piece was trying to map out these different areas. So when there's so many little wrinkles and things like that, you can sort of get lost of where all the shapes are and where everything goes. So it's best to make sure that you have a really good outline and go in and start to outline where all of the sections are before you go in and put a base layer. Because if you put in a base layer, then you won't be able to see where all of the different sections are, and it gets very confusing and you can get lost in the drawing. So then on these sort of warmer sections, I've gone in to use the warm grey 1, the warm grey 3 to get darker, and then gone in with the bista mostly, and then blend it down with the warm grey 1, and then go in and start adding some of the warm grey 5 and get really dark. You just need to make sure you're paying attention to your reference photo where all of the light and dark sections go. So let's talk about the wrinkles. So if you have a look at the wrinkles on the face, you can sort of see there is the darker section. Then above that is a blended out sort of section. And then above that is a very light highlight section. So you want to make sure where you're putting your highlight section and the very darkest section on each of the wrinkles. This is why it can take so long, because every wrinkle has a light and a dark section. So you can't just go in with a one tone or one color. You need to go in and add in a darker and a lighter area in each section. Remember, when it comes to realism, it's not really about the colors that you use. It's all about the lighter and darker sections, which are going to make it look realistic and make it look real. So making sure that you have the darker sections and the highlights in the right places are what's mainly going to make it look realistic. So throughout this tutorial, it's one of the things that I speak about the most, which is taking your time and just making sure that you're putting things in the right places, because this is what's going to make it look really effective in the end. So when it comes to the body of this one, because we're not doing any fur strokes or fur texture, we need to make sure that we're putting our pencil on the side. So you can see I'm putting my pencil on the side just to blend down all of the colors and really gradually work up the tones. If I go in with my pencil sort of straight up and down on the page, it's going to put in really, really harsh pencil strokes, which won't make it look realistic. So we need to practice our really, really smooth blending for texture like this. So it's a matter of going in with your lighter colors, blending in some of the warmer tones or the colder tones, gradually getting darker, and then blending it down to see what it looks like, and then you can go in and add more color. So I usually go in with the warm grey 1 in the warmer tones, and add in some bista, some warm grey 3, and then blend that down with the warm grey 1, add in some more warm grey 3, warm grey 5, a little bit more bista, and then blend it down again with the warm grey 1. So making sure that your blending will cover the tooth of the paper and give it a really, really smooth texture. Some artists do prefer to use a solvent or a wet blender, And there's nothing wrong with that. There's no right and wrong way of doing these sorts of things. It's just what people prefer to do. If you wanted to follow along with my tutorial and use a wet blender, there's nothing wrong with that. You can always do whatever you like. But for textures like this, I do think it looks effective just using your pencils, gradually building up the tones and blending them down together. So when it came to the legs, I did them one at a time. So just making sure to pay attention to your reference photo, see where all the darker colors are, and then gradually building up the tones. So for the legs, I'd go in with the warm grey one and start to map out all of the shapes, and then add in some bistre, then use the warm grey 5 to sort of outline where all of the wrinkles are. I'd add in some of the light ultramarine, the cold grey 4 in the colder areas, and then build up the bistre and the warm grey colours in the darker areas. So when it came to the colour underneath the chest, I left this section just so that I could put in all of the legs and the whole sort of thing, and then go back and evaluate how dark it needed to be. Sometimes it's hard to see where you need to go darker or lighter until you have the whole thing in, and then you can go back and make any changes that you wanted. Then for the last little bit of this, I just added some tape to the bottom and then put in a ground just so he's not sort of floating in mid-air. And with my tutorials, you can always go ahead and add a background. I would love to see your creative flair and what you can add to this piece to make it your own. So I really hope that you like this video. Remember to like and subscribe. Leave me a comment below letting me know what you think of this guy. And like I said, if you'd like to give this a go, check me out on Patreon and you can get this tutorial to complete your very own Rhino. Keep drawing. Thanks guys.